took the win. It was a great performance by Colin Brown. George Kurtz stepping off the podium with the Mercedes.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin Boehm, driver of the number 9 CrowdStrike Honda Civic Si. This week's been really killer so far. We've been fastest in both practice sessions yesterday. We qualified on pole today, and we just finished our first race where we led every lap and won the race. So far it's been it's just the most killer weekend that you can have. We still have 2 more races, one tomorrow and then one Sunday. So I still have a lot of work to do to try to close out this perfect weekend.
Austin, Texas has plenty of roads snaking around the city, but Circuit of the Americas is undoubtedly the fastest one around. Nearly 3.5 miles of pristine asphalt molded into 20 corners, climbing and falling over 130 feet. COTA is a prime example of a world-class racing facility. Today, Kevin Boehm and I will cover 90 minutes of racing with some of the fastest GT cars in North America. Stars and stripes and stars in the cars. You're watching CrowdStrike Racing's coverage of GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS from Circuit of the Americas in the Lone Star State. CrowdStrike runs on the AWS cloud, while AWS uses CrowdStrike to secure its servers. CrowdStrike is an AWS premier partner and extends its suite of security offerings to all AWS's customers, in turn making AWS the most secure cloud in the world. For 13 years, AWS has been the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform, offering over 175 fully featured cloud computing services. Last year, the firm entered into a new collaboration that saw AWS become the official cloud and machine learning provider for SRO America, as well as a series partner of Pirelli GT4 America and TC America. Effective cybersecurity means you see and stop threats like hackers as fast as possible. That's why every second counts. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Kevin Boehm, who races the number 9 HPD Civic Si in the TC America Series in the TCA category. And you're a guy that knows that every second counts. You won a handful of races this weekend. Had one this morning that wasn't quite a victory, but you gave it all you had there this afternoon. Kevin, welcome back to CrowdStrike Racing's coverage of GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. One more race this weekend, and it's a big one.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kyle. I'm really excited to kind of see what kind of racing we can watch today.
Yeah, yesterday we had 90 minutes of action, and it was a lot of fun. We got to see some really incredible racing. This is about a 3.5-mile racetrack, 20 corners around here, 133 feet of elevation change, almost all of it down in the first corner. That climbs 11% grade to a very tight blind hairpin crest, then downhill into the S's section, modeled after Silverstone's Maggots and Beckett's, over a crest onto the back straightaway into turn number 11, and then a 1-kilometer straightaway all the way to turn number 12, where you enter the arena section into a very tight and twisty area, where then we head through the carousel and back to the last 2 left-handers that bring us around to the start-finish line once more. We'll have 90 minutes of racing today with some GT3 cars, Kevin. We saw a lot of great racing yesterday, even with a slightly smaller field than normal. Of course, we're missing the number 04 car. The number 04 Mercedes AMG GT3 has been withdrawn from rounds 11 and 12 at COTA due to an unforeseen family emergency. DXDT Racing and CrowdStrike Racing will still fully support the rest of the COTA weekend and plan to be back in full force at Indianapolis October 2nd through 4th. So cars pulling onto the racetrack right now. Let's talk a little bit about Indianapolis before we get rolling. That's what's coming up next for you. And with a 31-point lead in the TCA category, Kevin, things are looking pretty good, but you still got to go to work in October.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple of week break to kind of think about what we need to do to win those 2 races. I mean, in the end, a 31-point lead puts us in a really good position. We don't have to win these races, but I'm really competitive and want to anyway. But I think it's going to be awesome to see this final race at COTA this weekend.
And here is a look here. We've got the Mercedes AMG GT3, and there were supposed to be 2 of those this weekend, but David Askew took it to had a lot of fun yesterday, it looked like. He was having a great battle all over the racetrack, and we saw that pass earlier. We were watching the highlights before the broadcast started. He made that epic outside pass at the exit of turn 1 down into turn number 2, and of course this weekend David Askew is also joined by Ryan DL, who will be starting in the car today, so we're starting with the Pro in the car. And let's explain a little bit about the driver lineups here. So most of the cars in this race today have what's called a Pro-Am driver lineup, Kevin. Help me understand what that is and why it might be important.
So the Pro-Am difference is kind of one driver makes his living driving these race cars, and they're really, really fast, and they very rarely make mistakes. They're very aggressive, and they're very good at what they do. And then the amateur driver is a little bit more they've not been racing as long, a little bit less experience, and the pro is kind of coaching them along and helping them improve as a driver. So you'll see some of these guys are really, really good if they've been kind of paired with a pro driver for a little while. So it really makes for an interesting dynamic when you put the pairing of the drivers against each other.
And we talked a lot at Road America of when you want to put your pro driver in versus your AM driver, and trying to come into the pits early or go later. Today they're probably going to want to keep those pro drivers in longer. And one of the big differences from Road America is the number 33 car, which is out there right now. That is actually a Pro-Am category car this time around. It's got Russell Ward in it, as well as Alec Udell, who we actually saw in the GT Rivals Esports competition earlier this year. So that's a new Pro-Am entry. I think it was an All-Am entry the previous rounds that we've done this CrowdStrike Racing coverage. So that car is now competing directly against the number 63 car, which is our other DXDT Racing car that we'll be following here this afternoon. And there's also 2 Racers Edge Motorsports cars. They brought their second entry this week as well. So 2 Acuras out there joining the field.
Yeah, that's right. And definitely a little bit more competition and a few different kind of cars here. I mean, the Acura and the Mercedes are massively different between front-engine Mercedes and the mid-engine Acura. So a lot of different characteristics of the car really make them better in one section of the track and maybe worse in another.
And Circuit of the Americas, we talked about briefly what this track is constructed of. It's actually got different aspects from courses all over the world. But the reason why it's important to CrowdStrike and AWS is they're actually a sponsor for the Petronas F1 team with Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. So it's really cool to come to a Formula One racetrack. This is the only F1 racetrack that's in the current schedule that is also on the GT World Challenge America schedule. So a little extra specialness this week as well to kind of share that racetrack with some of the great legends of motorsport. So really cool place to be joined here today. And again, this has been a beautiful weekend. I'm not from down here, so it's been hot and humid all weekend, but it could be a lot worse, I think. But how's it been in the race car? Hot?
Yeah, you think it's hot outside the race car. You should put on the fire suit and a helmet and get in the race car and go drive for, like these guys, 90 minutes. So it gets really, really hot in the car, and definitely have to do a lot of pre-hydration before you get in and really prepare yourself for the heat.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've also got P1TS software today to analyze the race as it happens. So thank you to P1 Software for giving our viewers an in-depth look at real-time data and analytics. We'll get into more of that and how CrowdStrike and SRO America work together because they're certainly an amazing partnership there. And it's been super beneficial to both parties, and it allows us to take a deep dive into the data behind the racing scene. There was a look just momentarily ago at some of the GT Sports Club cars. There's really two big categories out here today. There's the GT3 spec cars. There's also the GT Sports Club cars, which have both GT2 and GT3 spec cars. They will only race for 40 minutes, then they'll pull off the racetrack, retire the cars, and then the other GT3 competitors will run to the finish.
Right, and the big difference in those cars is the amount of downforce and the amount of horsepower in those cars. So especially at a track like Circuit of the Americas here, where you have some really long straightaways and then also some really tight and twisty turns, you'll see some of the difference in speed and different ways that you make speed with a car that has a lot of horsepower versus a car that has a lot of grip.
So with the Acura NSX pace car heading down the long back straightaway here, you know what my big impression when I got a lap around here on Friday was how much elevation there is at this racetrack. I've driven this in a sim before, and the turn one elevation is something you sort of expect, but my big discovery was how much the tail end of the S's as well as the back straightaway rise and fall. A lot more significant in real life, it feels, than the simulator.
Right, and you really as a driver have to try to use some of that to your advantage. I mean, the S's, you're going downhill almost all the way through, and actually the track slopes in one direction, so it makes some of the turns have a little bit of camber and some of them have less camber. So you take that knowledge and you try to use it to your advantage and make the car have more grip and set up to go fast. So it's definitely a challenging track because of those elevation changes, and yeah, it's fun to get it right.
It sure is. Lights are out on the pace car, and we'll be coming to the green flag this time for 90 minutes of GT World Challenge America powered by AWS. From Circuit of the Americas, this is an FIA Grade 1 circuit built in 2012, so it's brand new. Little known fact, I discovered in my research that this place was originally planned to be called Speed City, and certainly it kind of lives up to that name, especially in those first two sectors.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually know that either, but it completely fits because this track is super high speed, and it's so close to Austin. It's really convenient to come here, and an enjoyable track to really attend on and off.
Yeah, we'll get around to talk about Austin, Texas, and coming down here. This is also the second time this series has been here this year, kind of replacing the round that we were supposed to have at Watkins Glen. So that's where I'm from. So I'm a little bit torn on COTA, but I love this place. It's been a cool experience. The field comes out of turn number 20. It's going to be a long run down to the second of the two start-finish lines here at COTA. We'll finish the race where they're crossing now. We'll start it right under that big gantry on the front straight. 90 minutes of action from Circuit of the Americas, GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Green flag flies, and we're racing, and already side by side, 3 wide heading up the hill, 2 of the Racer's Edge Acura cars splitting. The number 63 of Ryan DL up the hill, the right motorsports entry clears for the race lead over Rodrigo Baptista, and down the hill, Jan Halen pulls ahead.
Yeah, I wonder if the 80 car might get called a little bit for jumping the start. I saw him kind of pull out to the side before the track actually went green, so that'll be interesting to see if they actually look into that.
And a frantic start already. The Racer's Edge Motorsports cars nose to tail here. That's for 3rd and 4th, and we'll go over some more of the class distinctions later in this race because you'll see on the ticker on the left-hand side of the screen the different colorations on those numbers. There's a reason for that. We'll get to that later. There's Kyle Marcelli and Ziad Gondor in that car, and I believe Gondor was actually in that number 1 Ferrari that we see in second place right now. He was there at Sonoma, but he's in a different car this week. There's Trent Hinman in the Racer's Edge car in the number 93, paired with Shelby Blackstock. That car has won a handful of races this year, but now they've got the 63 of Ryan DL in behind them as they chase each other down the backstretch.
Right, and this backstretch is really long, so you're going to see these guys kind of stay single file and try to stay in the slipstream of the car in front of them to try to get a little bit faster speed down at the end.
And Jan Halen in the right motorsports car paired with Fred Pordad. They had a really strong run yesterday after getting turned around in the opening corner, so they've made it through this time. And behind DL in that number 33, that's the Windward Racing car, but there is the DXDT Racing number 63. But with that Windward Racing car behind them, again, that's another Pro-Am entry, so that's all for position there as they head into the very tight and twisty stadium section, Kevin. This requires a lot of finesse to get through here with speed.
Right, and the track's so wide, and it's really inviting for a lot of different type of passing maneuvers, so you really have to pay attention to the cars behind you while also trying to really be precise with the car, so a really challenging section of the track.
And then into turn 19, you're going to want to track all the way out. They fly on by our broadcast compound. You see a couple cars going a little wide there over the edge of the rumble strips. Track limit's going to be a big discussion today, as they have been all weekend. Certainly staying in the white lines is important here at this racetrack.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of series really wants us to stay in the lines, but as a driver and we go faster and faster, it's harder and harder to stay in there. So I know as myself as a driver, you're always pushing those limits because you can get a couple more mile an hour on the exit if you go a little wider. So they're definitely going to be watching that pretty close.
I mean, they paved the whole racetrack, and CJ joked yesterday, he goes, we pay for the whole racetrack, I'm going to use it. I kind of laughed, because that's, even here, and you see these yellow anti-cut curbs on the apexes of the corners. I saw the track crew out there actually painting those last night because they were so covered in rubber that you couldn't see where they were. So they had to go out there and repaint them this morning to make sure that they were bright yellow and easy to spot.
Right, but actually we're kind of looking backwards down the track right now, and I think that's the only reason why they're still yellow, because I couldn't see them in my race earlier today because they were already black again.
Yeah, we had a GT4 sprint race this morning before the TC America race. And as the field heads on into the hairpin, getting a dig out of this corner and the run down the straight is very important. Here's a look at the replay of their start here. And that number 80, a good launch there, Kevin, but maybe a bit early of a move.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of poked his nose out a little bit before everybody started to accelerate, and normally they want you to stay in line until the green comes out, and then you can poke your nose out like that. So it'll be interesting if they think that was a jump or not.
And then running through the S's, and there's a couple different levels of anti-cut curbs that they can install here at COTA, and we actually have, I think, the medium-sized ones here. They also have ones that are taller that will launch the car even higher in the air, but these are, you could probably get on these pretty heavily. Kevin, were you using that a lot in the races today?
Yeah, I mean, the touring cars have a lot higher ride height than these GT3 cars, so I could easily drive right over top of them and not worry about anything happening to the car, and it was pretty soft and no issues. But some of these GT3 cars, they sit so close to the ground, and the splitter is in some cases only 50 millimeters high. Well, the curb itself is higher than that, so you can't just drive right over it, or you'll hit it with the car itself and do a lot of damage. And
certainly hurt the underbody aero. There's a lot of aerodynamic parts and pieces on these cars to make them go as fast as they are. You see the number 63 of Ryan DL now all over the rear wing of Kyle Marcelli as they climb up the hill into turn one, a 130-foot climb up the hill. And you're kind of braking and then heading over a blind crest, and you come down the hill. So is it difficult, do you think, in a high-powered race car like this to get the power down as the track falls away from underneath the race car?
It is a little bit, but at the same time, it's actually the most challenging part of that turn is the brake zone, because you start braking and you're really going uphill, and then right before you turn in, the track starts to level off, so you have to really release the brake pedal. Otherwise, you'll actually keep going straight. So I think the entrance is much more challenging than getting the power down, because by the time you get to that point, you can see the track and you're kind of back in control.
And the other thing to consider as well is the track is purposely designed with wide corner entries to sort of encourage drivers to search around a little bit. And maybe there's really one preferred line through the corner, but there's a whole lot of ways to begin that braking zone and a lot of different places to go. So you can see down here into turn number 11, the track widens out on corner entries. We have a look at one of our GT2 entries. That's Ryan Gates in the 311 RS Motorsport GT Sports Club car. And you can see how the track widens and then narrows up again. And on track out, there's another one of those spots where track limits have been extended slightly by competitors, but are always looking for that ragged edge.
Yeah, we always, as a driver, we read the regulations really close, and they try to define what track limits are, and we definitely interpret that just a little bit and see what we can get away with. So the whole weekend, we're always getting put in timeout of sorts for asking for too much.
Certainly, and we have got, again, P1TS that we'll be using all day long to analyze different battles on the racetrack. And here's a good look at an interesting one. The white line is Kyle Marcelli. The blue is Ryan DL's number 63. And you can see that they're running just under a half a second apart, and they've been that way since the drop of the green flag. So what you want if you're the number 63 at DL is you want these lines to cross. You want the blue line to be on top of the white one, and that would show us a pass for position has been made.
Right, and it's really tough to pass at this track, even though there's really long straightaways, because there's so many sections of the track where you're turning from left to right to left to right, and it's hard to set up a pass where you can kind of take advantage of the other car in a way that doesn't compromise you later. So it's definitely going to be a challenge for Ryan Dial to get by, but I'm sure he's strategizing in his mind right now to figure out the best way to do it.
And Jan Halen attacking the S's here, and this is another section that surprised me with how narrow it is. You're flying through here at speed, and that's one of the narrower sections of the racetrack, modeled after Silverstone's Maggots and Beckett's. That's over in England, one of the great racetracks of the world. Then turn 9 and 10 over to the left, up over another crest, then down the hill again. And, Kevin, I know you've got some engineering experience. In fact, you're a senior engineer at Honda R&D. So I asked CG yesterday because he works at AWS and he knows that he's very data-driven, right? As an engineer, when you're thinking about how the race car handles, how much of your engineering experience comes into play when you're either working on the car, adjusting the car, suggesting adjustments to the car, or when you're driving it?
Well, I mean, the engineering side, it's really trying to find an optimal way to set the car up that allows the car to turn, but not too much. So you need the car, especially at a track like Circuit of the Americas, to be able to change directions from left to right and back pretty easily. But you need to be in control enough that you don't always have to kind of slide the car around. So it's kind of a compromise, and I use a lot of data on the car itself. There's sensors that kind of measure what I'm doing and what the car's doing, and I can look at those kind of sensors and determine whether we're kind of achieving that or not.
And that's an important thing to know and to utilize in the race car. I also want to talk a little bit about the Honda ladder system, because Honda is one of the manufacturers that is very supportive of motorsport in North America, and they sort of have a ladder system, and you can see that even within the TC America series that you compete in. Tell me a little bit about that ladder system and how a driver can enter a series one place and end up somewhere else, really.
Right. I mean, HPD's put together a really cool program where you can kind of purchase a turnkey race car that's a Civic Si and start racing it in some of the kind of club regional level races and really get some experience under your belt at some lower level races. And then once you feel really comfortable, you can step up to a series like TC America, where you can be up against other professional racers with the exact same car. And I think that's really unique from any manufacturer. And then once you've raced that enough and maybe had some success, the HPD then offers some faster cars that are a little bit more competitive, like the Honda Civic Type R TC car, and then also we have the Honda Type R TCR car, which is even more fast than the TC car. And all of a sudden, all these cars are very relatable to each other, and the experience gained in each kind of carries over to the next one. So basically, you can keep getting faster and get more competitive, and then all the way up to what we're watching now. We see the NSX GT3 cars. That's kind of the top level of their ladder. Once you've really gained some success in TC America, you can jump up to this GT series and drive basically a supercar.
Yeah, it's really cool, and I've always been supportive of manufacturers that have a system like that, because it keeps you kind of in the HPD family, which is, I think, is really cool. And I think at some level it is a family. We were talking yesterday about the team effort that it takes, even within DXTT Racing. There's a lot of friendship and family that it takes to get to these racetracks. To have cooperation with your team is so essential to being fast. Here's a battle in the GT Sports Club category right now. And again, that is an older GT3 spec Audi R8. And we saw yesterday, it was actually the GMG Racing Audi that was running super well up inside the top 5 overall, which was very impressive considering that car is 4 or 5 years out of date.
Yeah, I mean, definitely these GT3 cars, every 3 to 5 years they get an update, and normally that makes them easier to drive or is some sort of improvement. So to see one of these older cars being that competitive is definitely impressive. That's
Jason Daskalos in the Daskalos Motorsports entry, the number 27. Behind him, I believe that is the 31 of ISSA. And they're running 210s, 209s right now. I wanted to show you P1TS and have a look at some of the lap times being run by the GT3 cars. You see the highlighted driver, Ryan DL, last time by a 207.004, and just about a tenth of a second off of Kyle Marcelli's pace right now. That just goes to show you how close the Mercedes and the Acura are as they chase each other down for a podium in the Pro-Am Championship. And while we're on that subject, we'll go over the different categories here. You see the drivers in red are the Pro-Am cars, which will have a Pro driver and an Am driver. And then the gold, of course, are the silver category cars, which are both drivers rated silver. So I think that those cars are not directly competing with Jan Halen, Baptista, Marcelli, and DL, but still there is an overall victory, and they do give you a trophy for that.
That's right. I think everybody who's on track here is super competitive, so they want that overall win, but fortunately they have kind of these different classes to try to make the competition equal. So in the end, their main goal is a class win, and then if they can pull out an overall, then they'll definitely take it.
And it's certainly worth being said about Jan Halen and Baptista leading in front of Hinman and Russell Ward, who's another one of the silver. Actually, I think the Ward car is a Pro-Am car this weekend with the driver lineup that they have, so we'll keep an eye on that. Or no, are they? What are they classified as here on the entry list? We'll have a look here in a moment. They are classified as which car were the Windward Racing car? Oh, they are a silver car this weekend. The Pro-Am car is the number 80. Is the Pro-Am entry for Racers Edge Motorsports. So about 15 minutes into this race, we got 90 minutes total, and the pit window will open up after the GT Sports Club entries pull off at 40 minutes. But this battle, I'll tell you, for third place, this is getting pretty frisky here with the two Acuras and the 63 DXTT racing car.
That's right, and kind of as we watch this on video, it seems like these cars are fairly equal all the way around the track. I don't really see an advantage anywhere in particular yet, so I'm not sure if that means Ryan is kind of sitting back and letting the Acuras maybe use their tires a little bit, or
yeah, it certainly is the ebb and flow between the NSX and the Mercedes-AMG GT3. So far, Ryan DL very quiet on the radio, not much team communication to the Scotsman other than watch track limits in turn 19. He received that warning on the previous lap. Meanwhile, the Racers Edge duo, they did make a couple of changes to the cars overnight, I'm told, seeking some additional pace, but early returns at least would indicate that they have not been successful in that pursuit. Their lap times relatively unchanged from yesterday. Drivers quiet on the radio, not a lot of communication, but not necessarily finding that burst of speed they were hoping for with some of the changes they implemented.
Thanks, Ryan. And we were talking about how close these cars are. We saw yesterday it was David Askew that was battling with the driver of the number 80. That was Ziad Gondor in that car, and they had a pretty fun fight. But up front right now, it's the Porsche and the Ferrari, and then three cars battling for third overall right now in this race. And here, I was just about to mention this, the Race Vision powered by AWS. I love this. Fastest speed on the straight heading into turn number 12. Kyle Marcelli, 160.9 miles an hour. Baptista, another 160.9 miles an hour. And Ryan DL, 159.1. All those cars within 2 miles an hour. In that is represented by a Porsche, a Mercedes, and a Ferrari. That is really cool to see. And an Acura. All together, 4 different manufacturers, less than 2 miles an hour separation in the straightaway. Super cool data. We talked about this with CJ yesterday, Kevin, but again, CJ is very data-driven, as is SRO America. And I think it's really cool to get that insight from AWS.
Right, and I think it really shows how much the series itself pays attention to this data and tries to keep the competition very equal. Even though these cars are massively different, the series does a really good job of kind of controlling where these cars are fast and how they make their lap time, and really putting on a good, even race for everybody.
And I think what the interesting one for me is we also have another Race Vision powered by AWS speed trap heading into the S's, and that's a really interesting one because of the way drivers approach that section. Some drivers might charge it early and try to sling it through, and some might kind of do the slow in, fast out method. I feel like in your TCA car, you're probably slinging it through there. It's probably a lot of fun, I'd imagine, but that's a cool section to kind of analyze the different speeds between cars.
Yeah, I mean, even in the touring car race, there was a lot of different strategies going through there. I think with my car, I was trying to go in pretty fast, but also stay in control of the car, not slide it around too much. So it was probably something in between a really hard charge and also a slow in, fast out. So it really depends on kind of how the car's set up and how easy it is to keep in control of it as you change from left to right to left to right. And it's a very difficult section. There's also a lot of bumps there that really don't show up when you walk the track or go slow, but when you're going well over 100 miles an hour, they really upset the car, so you have to keep in control.
Yeah, this racetrack's actually been repaved in a couple sections to sort of alleviate those bumps, but it does gain character over time, except places like Sebring are also tracks that have a lot of character in the bumps, but they sort of stay consistent from year to year. And Circuit of the Americas, while they've done an amazing job repaving the circuit to make it nice and smoother, it certainly has gained bumps over the years in different places as well that have created a challenge for drivers. So that's when you talk about learning a layout of a racetrack, you go there in the spring and you come back in the fall, that might be the same. Let it sit through a winter, especially at a place like Road America, where the track will heave and have all sorts of moisture seep in. You come back next year, it might be totally different.
That's right, and one thing that the series lets all the drivers do kind of before racing starts is we go out and we actually walk the track. We do it on foot, and we kind of look and we put our finger down, and sometimes we taste the asphalt and do some magic to try to know where the grip's going to be. But in more seriousness, you really look for those bumps and things that changed since the last time you were there. And some people take a lot of notes and they try to be able to find things that way. So those track walks are really important.
And especially, we talked about curbing a lot at Road America. Now, you compare a track like Road America's curbing to something like Circuit of the Americas. The curbing here is actually very tame. The red and white candy stripes, they're an FIA standard design. I think they call them Vallelunga curbs for the racing nerds out there, but they're very tame in comparison to Road America. So a track walk will let you get down to the surface and really let you inspect different parts of the racetrack, not only the bumps and the corners, but also track features like curbs, ruts, and all that. So other information that might be good to know when you're driving over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly. And you already mentioned the yellow curbs are kind of changeable at this track, so it's really good to walk out there and see how high they are, which ones are actually installed this time. So that's just another example of kind of those curbs can really change how you attack the track. So it's really important to know exactly what they are and if they've changed since the last time you were there.
So climbing down the back straightaway again, up and over the crest, and they'll be getting pretty close to their, maybe not quite their top speed, but awful close. 160, what we saw on the Race Vision powered by AWS, that's certainly not slow by any stretch. Well, they might have a little bit more legs left in them if the straight was longer. That's plenty fast. I got a chance to drive a Spec Miata last weekend at Road America. I was doing about 110. I thought that was enough. But these guys are certainly fearless in a way. And I talked to CJ yesterday about the speed in those that TCR car. 148 was his speed trap the other day. Let's talk about top speed of your TC car. It's certainly stock engine, stock transmission, but not necessarily going slow.
No, I mean, it's definitely not anywhere near the GT3 car speed or even the TCR speed, but I think we were doing a little over 120 miles an hour on that long straightaway. It really, it's a long straightaway, but you're leading onto it so slow you don't have a lot of time to get up to speed. But then these GT3 cars, they could go quite a bit faster than that, but because of the kind of nature of the turns of this track, a lot of the teams run just a little bit more aero. So they're trying to, the wing is stood up a little bit higher and the splitter is kind of lower to the ground. They're trying to make downforce so they can go fast in the high-speed turns, which ends up slowing them down a little bit on the straightaway. So I think we would see some higher speeds at other tracks where you don't have that character.
And certainly maybe slipstream is something to consider as well. Maybe not quite as effective in a GT3 car as it is in your TCA Civic, but tell me a little bit about what the slipstream, what the draft is per se, and how that could be used to your advantage.
Right, well, whenever you're kind of closely following another car, that car is, we like to call it punching a hole in the air, but basically it spreads the air like a wake, and if you fill up that wake, that air isn't hitting the front of your car, so you get less air resistance, and it allows you to actually pick up more speed in the straightaway. But the one thing you have to be careful about is if you do that when you're really close to some turns, that air not hitting the front of the car actually makes the downforce a little bit less and you lose grip through the turns. So you have to try to do it here on this long straight without doing it once you really approach a curve. So it's kind of a plus, and you have to give and take a little bit.
Kyle Marcelli right on the tailpipes of teammate Trent Hinman as they head down the back straightaway here. You see them in tow, and he's going to pop out of line here and try to dive on the brakes. Not quite close enough to make it happen. We saw this with you earlier today, trying to get by the Hyundai Veloster out there in front of you down in turn number 20. Gave it a couple of good tries, but these cars are so equal on the brakes as well that you really got to be committed to make that work.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, sometimes you're pulling the nose out like that, and you're almost trying to distract the driver in front of you, or maybe make them brake later than what they think what the car really can. So I definitely tried that a few times today. I got it a little wrong a couple of times, but in the end, it's all kind of a game. It's a cat and mouse with the car in front of you, but since Ryan Dial's right there behind him, everybody has to be a little careful because Ryan's there to pick up any kind of scraps if they make a mistake. And
it's amazing how much slower these drivers will go when they're running side by side when you have to use half the racetrack instead of the entire racetrack. And that's why I thought the speed trap, the Race Vision powered by AWS in the S's yesterday was so interesting. We saw Ryan Dial's speed, or not Ryan Dial, it was David Askew's speed and Ziad Gondor. They had gone through the S's side by side and were about 15 miles an hour off of the leader when they were doing that. So it's, being side by side is certainly not something you want to be for very long. You want to just get the pass done as fast as possible.
Right, when you're side by side, especially at these speeds, you have to kind of drop the speed of the car quite a bit just so you don't slide into the car that's next to you. So it's good to see those speeds dropping because that means those guys have a lot of respect for each other, and you basically can't redefine physics, so that's the main reason why you have to do that.
Well, and just like CrowdStrike says, every second counts. So every time that you're spending side by side is time that you're not gaining on the guy in front of you. So these Racer's Edge Motorsports cars continue to battle down towards turn number 11 in the hairpin. Ryan DL waiting for them to get side by side to take advantage of it. As I want to talk a little bit more about, I touched on it briefly, the kind of the team effort and the family side of it. I want to know a little bit about the work with Operation Motorsport and how that has affected your, the team's efforts here at Circuit of the Americas or the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, the crew that we have for my TC America car is really small. It's really made up of my dad and my wife, and we needed a little bit more help from that, and we were able to partner up with Operation Motorsport and kind of welcome in a couple of members as part of our family. So they kind of joined us and became just another member of our family, maybe an extended cousin as it was, and kind of we all get along great, and the extra set of hands and being able to kind of pass along some of the knowledge that I have about racing has been an absolute great experience, and kind of giving that team experience and family experience back to some Operation Motorsport members has been a great kind of give back to as we kind of make our step into this professional racing as well.
I found it so interesting talking to both you guys about the team efforts that are involved in racing, because a lot of people will go, hey, well, there's one guy driving the car, so it's all up to him. Well, not really. There's so many people behind the scenes, at DXDT Racing, specifically in just TC America, that make the team tick. And there's a bunch of TCR entries. There's your TCA entry, as well as the two GT3 entries. So there's a lot of people and doing a lot of really hard work to make sure that the race cars get on the racetrack and are competitive every weekend, as they have been. We've seen DXDT cars in victory lane all weekend, so it's certainly paying off.
That's right. DXDT is a pretty amazing team that's basically also family run. I mean, David Askew here in this race, he's got both his daughters involved here at the track. I mean, it's really cool to see that. And then DXDT really has some of the best guys in the paddock. I mean, it's pretty amazing to see what they do, and it's so fun to be around everybody. They know when to be serious, and they still know how to have fun at the track, and it's what a great experience being part of DXDT this year.
It's always fun to be at the racetrack, and I sort of joke because when you're standing on the podium, you got to think, wow, I'm a race car driver. That's got to be such a fun feeling to just remind yourself, you know what, I went out there on the racetrack today and I won a race. How cool is that? Your first time a couple weeks ago at Road America, and then just winning a whole bunch of them in a row.
Well, I mean, it's sometimes it's hard to realize it's real. I mean, it almost feels like a dream, because I've been working at this for so long. Once you're kind of up there and you feel like you finally did it, I'm immediately thinking about the next race, especially since we have so many at a time right now. We had 3 races this weekend. As soon as you've kind of finished with the one, you're immediately thinking of the next, because you want to kind of keep that feeling going. So it's been awesome to finally get that first win a couple of weeks ago, and then we were just on a real roll there for a while. And I still think we finished 4th today, but really good result for us. We weren't far off the podium, so I think we got a lot of really good momentum as we go to Indy in a couple weeks.
Well, a couple more points to touch on. We'll talk about Indy in a moment, but we talk about your first race win. Where did you get your start in motorsport, and how did you end up here? I mean, where was the transition from concept all the way to victory lane?
Well, I mean, it feels like so long ago, but just about the same time that I was kind of deciding what I was going to do in college. In high school, I went to kind of a club race and saw some kind of teams that were preparing cars, and I was just like, man, I really want to do something where I can just come and hang out at the track like this. And I started talking to some of the teams, and I spoke with an engineer, and he talked about the things that he did, and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to be an engineer. So I studied engineering, and kind of at the same time I started to go to track days and learn how to drive at the same time that I was learning kind of vehicle dynamics. In the textbook, I was getting to experience those on track, and then I just did a lot of club racing in many different series, starting with NASA, and then spent a lot of time in SCCA, and fortunately was very competitive over the last 5 years or so, and won a couple of national championships, and that opened up the possibility to come here and see what we could do on the professional level.
And it certainly worked out for you. And it's so interesting because I went to college for computer engineering, and it's so funny that we kind of took a similar track, ended up in exactly the same place. But I think motorsport a lot is what you do and who you know. And I think it's really important to know good people and to meet people, and going out to events, local events, is really how you get interested in it. And of course, CrowdStrike and AWS, I'm sure the people that work there have been very data-driven people. They find this fascinating, as do we all, because that's why we're all here. So it's such a cool story. And going back to, you said every time you win, you're standing on the podium, you're thinking about the next event. Well, that next event is at a very important place. That would be Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where we finish out the 2020 TC America season. You have a 31-point lead, and you're 2 races away from grabbing a championship potentially. So talk to me about that, and is that weighing on you pressure-wise heading into Indy in October?
Well, I mean, so far this year we've had a lot of races, and I've just tried to take it one race at a time, and really tried to each individual race try to just get the best result that we can. And in the end, I think that's what we're going to do when we get to Indy. There's 2 more races. There's 2 more opportunities to earn points. I just want to try to maximize the result that I get out of those 2 races, and as long as I know that I did my best, I hope that that's enough to win the championship. But if it's not, knowing that is good enough for me right now. I think we've already kind of showed that we belong here this year, and that was my kind of main goal. So the championship would be just real big icing on the cake, but yeah, it's really just taking those last 2 races just like we've done so far this season.
And driving by the pagoda at 110 miles an hour will certainly be a really super cool experience for everybody. We continue to watch this battle for 3rd in class here. Trent Hinman and Kyle Marcelli, it's actually 3rd overall, I should say, as they head down the hill into turn number 11. And we're just about 30 minutes in. Oh, Marcelli with a big move up the inside into turn number 11, side by side. Teammates door to door, and it looks like Hinman will have to relinquish this spot, or no, they're going to battle down the back straight now.
Yeah, that's right. That's kind of a result of the opening up to the apex there. It really allowed Marcelli to try to make an attempt there, but because the turn's so sharp, he really had to lower his speed, which allowed Hinman to get back by as they're now going right back into the brake zone here.
And Ryan DL's got to be really excited about watching these guys run. Oh, they're going to run each other off the racetrack in turn number 12, and wide goes Hinman, and now Marcelli gets through, and here comes DL with a big run in turn 13.
Yeah, I think Ryan wanted to be a little bit closer there so he could have capitalized a little more, but this is allowing him to catch back up if they keep battling like this.
And remember that Hinman and Marcelli are not in the same category. Hinman is the silver class car and Marcelli is the Pro-Am car, so they're not directly competing for class position, but they are certainly running for overall position, and that's a podium spot that they're going for right now. But DL now in this 3-car battle again as the Acuras have swapped positions.
Yeah, that's right. And even though these cars are on the same team, they still want the inter-team bragging rights as well. So you'll see that they're racing pretty clean right now. They're not banging wheels or anything like that because they have a lot of respect for each other. But at the same time, they sort of want those bragging rights to say that they were the fastest Acura today.
Yeah, they got down into turn 12. They were racing each other pretty hard. I think they really want those bragging rights. So 30 minutes in, scrap for position between 2 of the team cars for Racers Edge Motorsports. They've lost some ground to the front 2. The Squadra Corsa car, the 488 GT3, driven by Baptista, and then, of course, that Wright Motorsports entry with Jan Halen out in front right now in the Porsche as they sweep their way through the S's. Another section of the racetrack that has a lot more elevation than it looks like on TV. It looks relatively flat. You get out there, and it rises and falls enough to be significant and for you to feel it.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the car, you feel the grip kind of come and go in the car as you go left or right and over these ups and downs. And to really time that right is really important to be able to maximize your speed through that whole section.
And running down the hill now, they've sorted themselves out for now. We talked about CrowdStrike and AWS, but CrowdStrike specifically is a sponsor on a couple of the DXCT racing cars, and they work significantly with SRO as well, and they actually do a lot of work protecting SRO America, and we'll show you that. We'll be back in just a moment.
When we first looked at the opportunity of working with CrowdStrike as a technical partner and as our security partner, we knew it would help us in this world that we live in today, but we didn't realize how much it would help us to be secure in a post-COVID environment, or as we have to exist today, as we all say, it's a new normal that we have to operate on. When we were very impressed with CrowdStrike, with the ability to quickly respond in seconds to threats, that's been a great aspect of our partnership.
Back from Circuit of the Americas for GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Watching the number 63 DXTT Racing Mercedes of Ryan DL chase two of the Racer's Edge Motorsports cars, Marcelli and Hinman, who have just traded spots. Jan Halen, Baptista out front. Less than 10 minutes remaining for the GT Sports Club cars, though, and that is Issa out front in the Ferrari. Daskalo's behind in the Audi. With 57 minutes to go here, Kevin, we've seen the front two kind of pull away, but this three-car battle has not gone anywhere.
Right, and it looks like Marcelli might be pulling a little bit away from Hinman here, but yeah, I mean, this has been a really tight battle for the whole race so far.
And Hinman and Blackstock have been a pretty successful pairing this year. They've won a handful of races. This second entry was not at the previous couple rounds at Sonoma or Road America, so it's interesting to see them come back together here towards the end of the year. I believe both cars were here at Circuit of the Americas earlier in the year, and this is the second trip to COTA this year. And how has that been coming back to a racetrack for the second time? Have you learned anything from your first experience that helped you this time around?
Well, I mean, it wasn't just the learning from the first experience, but everything that I learned in between this race and coming back here. So I learned a lot by the first race here because the car was brand new. When we went to the first practice, it had 3 miles on it. So we didn't know a lot about the car when we raced here in March, and we've had a lot of races since then. So for my car in particular, we were able to learn a lot about the car and how to make that work, and I think it really showed by winning the first 2 races of the weekend here. These guys, most of them have already been to COTA before, so they already had some data on what the cars really want to do. But again, because this track changes so much between kind of the bumps and kind of some repaves and stuff like that, you still have to kind of go and experiment and find the optimal kind of best case scenario for the car to get all the performance out of it.
Certainly, and we are beginning to approach, I guess it's in the minds now of the pit stop sequence that we'll have to do, because at 45 minutes, we're going to basically open up the pit road and allow drivers to come on down and switch out for their other driver, and also, get tires and fuel in the car. So tell me a little about, what it takes to do a driver change in this series. Obviously, there's a lot of things you got to unplug and plug in and get in and out very quickly, and it's pretty tight inside these race cars.
Yeah, I mean, these guys do a lot of practicing the actual driver changes because you have this 6-point seat belt that you have to be able to undo and hook back up really quickly. You have radio cables, drink tubes so that you can drink inside your helmet to keep hydrated. There's a lot of intricate stuff, and these guys kind of choreograph it and know exactly what they're going to do. And generally, they're able to switch out from one driver to the other in around 35 seconds or something like that. And that's even pretty quick if you think about just getting all your stuff out of your car when you get home and you're going to go inside. That takes 30 seconds, goes by pretty quick.
It does, and it's so funny to watch these drivers get in and out. It's really a cool experience, and it's something that like you mentioned, you practice a lot to make sure you get it right. There is a minimum pit stop time. You do have to spend a certain amount of time on pit lane. That's to sort of equalize everybody, and the goal is to be sitting and waiting for that clock to elapse and not still be plugging things in. That's
right, and you want the driver to be kind of belted in, nice and safe, all the things hooked up, and just be waiting for that time to expire. And these cars have a kind of a timer, and they're trying to. It's time in pit lane that's the minimum time. So they're sort of predicting how much time it took to drive in pit lane all the way to the pit box, and then how much time it's going to take to drive out of that box all the way to the end of pit lane, and trying to get that right.
We just saw the Racer's Edge Motorsports team guys having a look at a bunch of laptops on pit lane, and again, we've talked about how much data is involved in working on a race car and improving a race car, and they might be looking at something like P1TS that allows you to look in depth at not only lap times but also sector times, so seeing where a car is quick in a particular sector, which I think is always super interesting. If we have a look on the right side of this monitor right now, we can have a look at Jan Halen's first sector. It's a 10th better than the second place car Baptista, but Kyle Marcelli's is about 2/10 better than the race leader in that first sector. So knowing where drivers are better, you can help sort of coach drivers through, hey, maybe you should use more curb here or attack this corner harder, and even setting up the race car. Maybe
we saw that interesting moment with the 2 Racer's Edge cars going door to door there for a couple of quarters, and John Meraki, the Racer's Edge team owner, he admitted to me that, yeah, that was a little bit nerve-wracking, no question about that, but their team principles on this have been clear throughout the season. They will let their cars race, and they only have 2 rules. You can't make contact, and you can't do anything stupid. I said to John, well, that didn't count as anything stupid. He said, no, it was close, but it was fair game. And the big thing was to remember that the one car, the number 80, the white car that's missed a couple of rounds, they're not in a championship position. The red car of Hinman and Blackstock, they still are seeking that championship. Nevertheless, if one car is clearly quicker than the other, then they're free to race and let that play out, and that's exactly what we saw.
Thanks, Ryan. Here's a look at it again. The big dive by Marcelli up the inside, and then they had this drag race down the straightaway into turn number 12, which is where that, I don't think they quite touched, but it was awful close. So, but going back to the data, and we're using P1TS to analyze this race, but P1TS is driven on the AWS cloud, which is so is everything for SRO America. There's a whole lot of data processing going on during a race, and understanding data and getting it with basically no latency. What I thought was amazing is we actually have a track map on P1TS that we can look at, and this is such a cool feature because you can see where cars are on the racetrack, and there is the number 1 car of Baptista coming through the carousel, and you can see, let's see where the 1 car is. He's coming through the carousel, and he's basically on your screen sort of in the left, and we're going to see him out the window right here, and there he goes on the track map by where we are between turns 19 and 20. So that's how little latency there is just amazing to me as a computer engineering student. I just find that amazing.
Yeah, it's the teams really rely on this software to kind of know where all the other cars on track and know the gap to the other cars, especially once we're getting close to this this pit stop window, because you want to know if you pit now, where are you going to come out on track and what other cars you're going to be around.
Yeah, it's just valuable information for teams so that they're not hand calculating things the way they used to. It's a lot easier to have the cloud crunch the numbers for you at AWS. There is Gates in one of the GT2 spec Porsches. And we talked about GT3, and let's kind of get into that more, because GT2, GT3, for those that aren't familiar, it just sounds like a lot of letters and numbers, and let's break it down. So what are the differences between a GT3 car and this Porsche, which is a GT2 car?
So the differences, both are kind of based on actual road-going cars. So like there's a GT3 Porsche and a GT2 Porsche, but both have very similar style engines, but the GT2 has more power than the GT3. But the GT3 is a little bit lighter and a little bit more downforce and a little bit more grip on the car. So what that does is the GT2 car will be a little bit faster down the straightaways. It's gonna really, it's best to explain it as a rocket ship. These cars have a lot of horsepower and they have a lot of top speed. The GT3 cars are gonna be slower in a straight line, somewhat because of the wings and things are a little bit bigger, and it slows the car down in a straight line, but that allows them to brake a lot later. It allows them to get on the throttle a lot earlier. So the GT3 cars are generally actually faster in lap time, but they're doing it in completely different ways.
It's so interesting to know all the differences, and there's quite a few of them. But there's Jason Daskalos. He got really aggressive on the curbing in the S's, had a little mistake there in turn number 8, trying to chase down Issa as they are on their final lap here for GT Sports Club. And climbing up the hill, big slide, for a big moment there for Daskalos, and he's still trying to save it, and he does not quite do it. And around he'll slide at the exit of turn number 10. And man, that was he almost had it there, Kevin. He was wrestling it for a little bit.
Yeah, I honestly think he would have had it, but there's a lot of big bumps when you get wide on the exit of 9 there, and I think that's what really just made it too hard to control.
Yeah,
you'll see he kind of hits the yellow curb and then starts to lose the rear, and it's the bumps right there at the grass that really makes it hard to catch.
And as of now, we're still in a green flag condition, but if this car doesn't get moving, we'll probably go full course yellow, as it looks like Issa will have an easy drive back to the checkered after having the Daskalos on his rear wing coming up the hill into turn number 1.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Izza right now, I would be taking a huge sigh of relief. It's a lot of pressure off of you, especially on the last lap, but definitely you never like to see your competitor have an issue like that. But fortunately, it didn't look like he touched the wall, so probably no harm, no foul. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to maintain his position or not, but it looks like he might be able to.
Yeah, again, they're in the GT3 spec cars. The other two GT Sports Club cars are GT2. We have not yet seen if he's moved that car, and actually this is a great opportunity to use our P1TS software. And let me just double check the number which is on that car. Daskalos was in the number 27, and as we can see on P1TS, he's actually right over in turn 15 right now, so he did get rolling, and this is why this is such a useful tool.
That's right. I mean, it definitely shows that the car got back going, and shows that he didn't actually lose a position, which was very fortunate for him.
So across the line, Izza will come on through and win in GT Sports Club in that number 31 Ferrari. And we'll go back to our GT3 fight as we see the race leader, or actually that's the second place car, that's Rodrigo Baptista. And right in front of Ryan Gates, who is currently the leader of the GT2 Porsches in GT Sports Club, and he'll come around and take up the checkered for that classification here in just a moment. Through the carousel, that's a dynamic corner, kind of a triple apex right-hander, kind of heading downhill. You know, one thing I noticed right there, you can see that curb actually rises up a little bit, so you maybe you're not quite on top of that one, but it was interesting to me doing the track walk, noticing how much higher that curb was than a lot of the other ones around the racetrack.
Yeah, I mean, the carousel, you sort of drive it like it's one big turn, but it's got probably 3 or 4 times where you come back to the inside of the track, and there's a couple of times where the track will raise up in the air and go back down, and really trying to maintain your grip through there is a challenge, especially in traffic. So you have to, there's really one ideal way through there, so when you go too wide, it gets really interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure too wide everywhere on this racetrack is interesting. Ryan DL continues to work over Trent Hinman here at the exit of turn number 1, cresting and then down the hill, sweeping through turn number 2, and painting the corners like in baseball. You're trying to make it look awful good. You can paint some corners yourself with a CrowdStrike Racing coloring book, and you can enter that coloring book contest. You can download that book at CrowdStrikeRacing.com. You can tag your best entries on social media by the Indianapolis race weekend, October 2nd through 4th. And the winner gets a cool CrowdStrike Racing swag bag. And having some of that CrowdStrike Racing swag that tells me that everyone should enter that because they've got some awful cool stuff.
Yeah, that's right, and there's a lot of different things that you can color from CrowdStrike, and I've already seen some really cool examples out there, so definitely I encourage everybody to get involved and put some art together and put the color on the paper and see what you can come up with.
It's really cool. You know, there's part of me that I want to enter that contest myself. I might do that at CrowdStrikeRacing.com. I might get into that after the race here. So 46 minutes left. We'll have our pit window open shortly for GT World Challenge America powered by AWS. And what I'm interested in is watching Ryan DL and when they'll pit in relation to the Racer's Edge 93, which is right in front of them, to see if they can leapfrog them in the pit lane.
Right. It's hard to tell, but right now, Ryan may be being held up a little bit by Hinman, and if that's the case, one strategy that you can do in the pits is to stop a little bit early and try to kind of jump the Acura in pit lane. So it's definitely something that I'm sure they're considering at DXDT right now, but it really depends on kind of Ryan's feedback from the car. If he feels like he's running flat out and not being held up right now, then it probably still makes sense to keep him in the car a little bit longer.
You can see that white line is the number 93 of Trent Hinman. You can see how that line has trended towards the blue. That's the number 63. So it does appear to me, Kevin, that Ryan DL is being held up slightly by Trent Hinman's number 93 Acura. So that battle continues on as we go back to Jan Halen, who is leading right now. He'll transfer the car over to Fred Poordad here at the pit window opening here in just a couple seconds. But again, with your pro driver in, if you're a Pro-Am entry, you're probably going to want to stay out a little bit longer.
Yeah, generally the pro driver, and not always the case, but generally the pro driver is the faster of the two drivers. So you just to get the fastest overall finish you can do, you want to leave that faster driver in as long as you can. But you still don't want to get too close to the end of this pit window because you can get a penalty if you don't pit early enough. And
we actually have seen a couple penalties back at Sonoma. There was a bunch of pit road related incidents, and you're on the racetrack, you can sort of control your own destiny out there, and you control your own destiny with pit road penalties as well. So don't make mistakes in the simpler parts of the race. Just coming down pit lane, make sure the pit limiter is on. These cars have electronic devices to keep the car from speeding. Make sure that you engage that button and disengage it at the right time so you don't get a speeding penalty in pit lane.
That's right, and it's definitely. It looks like Ryan got around the out Acura there, so I'm not sure if if Hinman got a really bad run there, or if Ryan did that under the brake zone. But they're definitely trying to fight here.
Yeah, and Hinman had a look back into turn number 12, and I'm sure we'll get a replay here in just a moment to show us what happened. But DL getting by the Trent Hinman machine. And it seems like that 93 is not quite at the pace it was yesterday. Here's a look here. They were, already at the exit at turn number 11. He was out wide and got squeezed back on, just missing the sponsor board there, which had already had a mark on it from yesterday, as you saw on our Instagram. But I wonder if that was DL just making a big move up the inside of 11, but he got it done.
Yeah, I think probably that was a really aggressive move into 11 there, and Hinman didn't have a lot. It's really hard to defend there because the track's so wide, so you don't really have anything that you can do other than just give them a little bit of room and hope that they let you back on the track. And fortunately for Ryan, he got a position out of it, but now Hinman really wants back by.
It was a super gutsy move, and that 63's been making gutsy moves all week. We saw yesterday David Askew have that big move up the inside in turn 2. But they've been certainly very on pace this week and having good fights with these racers' edge cars. And cresting turn 1 now, that gap is beginning to grow. We'll check back in on P1TS before they hit pit lane just to see if the 63 pulls a gap on the 93 behind them.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he is so far, and I think he's going to try to run down Marcelli up front there. He's been able to stretch a gap out, so I think it's really Ryan's trying to get back to the next car in his class, which is Marcelli.
And that would be a podium finish overall if he could get there. So that's the battle that we're watching and keeping an eye on for now, with Halen and Baptista well clear. I think the fight's for third this afternoon.
Yeah, that's right.
Here's the Windward Racing number 33. They've hit pit lane and going to do a driver swap. It'll be Russell Ward jumping out of that car, and it should be Alec Udell jumping in. Udell is a driver we saw in the GT Rivals Esports Championship, along with a couple other drivers that we see here this afternoon. So this is Udell's first time in this car this week, and he's been doing really well.
Yeah, I mean, likely he could have actually practiced with this car in GT Rivals because the Mercedes is in that game. So with his experience racing with GT Rivals already, he could go into Assetto Corsa and turn some laps, and maybe that helped him get up to speed a little bit.
And the GT Rivals Esports Championship that happened earlier this year, a handful of drivers from GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, competed in that. You competed in that as well, did very well. Tell me a little about the simulator and maybe some of the similarities that you noticed between those cars in the sim and the ones on the racetrack.
Well, I think especially with the Assetto Corsa Competizione, the official simulator of World Challenge, I mean, it's really interesting because these cars have a lot of different adjustments you can make on the steering wheel, and it's so realistic you can make those same adjustments in the simulation itself. So a lot of the things that you would need to know to come into one of these cars at a track and know how to drive the car, you can practice it in Assetto Corsa really easily, and the cars drive very realistic, and the tracks are modeled incredibly realistic, so you can get reference points and get some experience on how to drive the car around the track as well.
And it looks like Kyle Marcelli will hit pit lane here from 5th spot, and he'll come on down and trade out himself. And here's Ryan Marine.
Kyle Marcelli, the Canadian. Ziad Gondor, who raced here earlier this year, but did so in a TR3 Racing Ferrari. Still getting acclimated to this Acura NSX GT3 Evo. He'll get on board with some help from the team. It's a scuffed set of Pirelli P0s coming out of the tire oven for the Racers Edge Motorsports crew. Pretty smooth stop to this point. Remember, they had an issue yesterday in the first race of the weekend, sliding a bit too far and had trouble getting the fuel nozzle engaged. That cost them a ton of time. This one going much more smoothly. Kyle was out, the car is down and waiting, and as you guys have talked about, that's a good sign.
Thanks, Ryan. And Ryan, the car stalls. Oh, Kevin, that's going to be just a couple seconds there. Is going to cost you so much time on the racetrack, but just maybe pull the clutch up a little too fast.
Yeah, I heard him. He was on kind of the kind of launch control there, and I think he was on it a little too long, and when he let the clutch out, the car was letting off the power because he was in launch control too long. So that might have just been a little bit of a mistake, and it'll be really close. That was almost about the same gap that they had to Ryan Dial. So if DXDT pulls through with a great pit stop like they normally do, they might be able to jump them in pit lane because of that mistake.
Yeah, and again, these cars, while they do have paddle shifted transmissions where you just basically pull a lever and the car goes into gear, you don't have to use the clutch once you're rolling, but just like a normal manual transmission car, you do have to slip the clutch when you pull away from a stop, just like the days of old. So it's there's a lot of technology in these race cars, but you still have to use that clutch pedal, and if you pull up too fast, you can stall the car.
Yeah, and honestly, it is a clutch pedal, but it is really tricky because these engines have really lightweight kind of rotating mass in the engine. So it's really hard not to stall the engine sometimes. So that's why you hear the engine rev up a lot, and then normally they'll let the clutch out really fast, and sometimes even smoke the tires as they leave.
A little easier to just burn out of the pits than try to pull away cleanly. But I want to go back to something that Ryan mentioned on the pit stop sequence, is the scuff tires going on the number 80. Explain the difference between what a scuff tire is and why you do that versus whatever a not scuff tire is.
So we kind of refer to it as a sticker. A sticker tire is a brand new tire. It normally has actual stickers on it to show it's new. A scuff set of tires have normally been lightly used on the track, and the main difference is a sticker tire, because it's brand new, will be a little bit faster. But if you just drive it straight on track as a sticker and immediately start trying to run for a long period of time, normally the performance of that tire will fall off a little bit quick. A scuff set of tires, in contrast, will have a little bit less grip, but it'll hold that same amount of grip for a longer period of time. So if you'd want the tire to still have more grip at the end of a stint, you run a scuff set of tires, and that helps you kind of keep that tire performance for a longer period of time.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I haven't heard a whole lot about scuff versus sticker this weekend, but again, Ryan bringing us that excellent information from pit lane. There is the race, the second place driver, Rodrigo Baptista, Jan Halen up the road. Still have yet to see DL hit pit lane, and they'll come on down, and I think Hinman will follow. There is the race leader, Jan Halen, coming in, and he will relinquish that seat to Fred Pordad for the Wright Motorsports entry. And you see the 33 go on by, and I think that car still has to come around again for another lap to guard position. Second place also coming in, Baptista will give up the seat to Martin Fuentes for the Squadra Corsa car.
Yeah, and we see a bunch of cars hitting pit lane now, so DXDT car and the other Racer's Edge car as well. So this is definitely a race in pit lane to try to see who can execute this pit stop and get as close to that minimum pit time as possible.
And I think what we're really trying to see is where will Ziad Gondor in the number 80 Racer's Edge car, where will he come out in relation to DL and Hinman, because he was in front of those two cars before the sequence. Here is the DXDT Racing number 63, and DL will jump out.
Slides to a halt, looking like a pretty smooth start. A little bit close to the wall here. It gives the crew a bit less room to work with for DXDT Racing. Meanwhile, we do see the Acura of Hinman coming in. He'll be turning over to Shelby Blackstock. We've got David Askew being installed behind the wheel of this Mercedes-AMG GT3. Good stop, it would appear, for the Wright Motorsports team. That car's been released and already heading down pit lane with Fred Pordad installed behind the wheel of that Porsche 911 GT3R. Also, Martin Fuentes making his way down pit lane.
Thanks, Ryan, and it appears a pretty good stop. They're done with the surface now, just waiting for the timer to elapse, and then they can pull away. Good clean exit for the number 63, which will now have David Askew behind the wheel. So they'll pull away, and you'll see that they have kept the 93 behind them. That car now driven by Shelby Blackstock.
Right, and I don't see the 80 Acura come around yet, so they might have got out in front of him. There he is in the background.
Way in the background, an entire straightaway away, and the difference now will be, I guess we have tire warmers in this series to keep the tires at the temp, but slightly colder tires maybe than the tires that the 80 car has on. Talk about tire temperature just a little bit. You see the celebration going on in the pits. Hot tires, maybe not good. Warm tires are good, though. There seems to be a fine line between sticky and slick between tire temperature.
Yeah, generally these tires, if they're cold, and when we call them cold, we're talking about just like the same temperature, like the ambient temperature. They don't actually make a lot of grip, and these cars, if you don't have a lot of grip, they'll slide around, and believe it or not, they won't actually warm up the temperature very quick that way. So what they do is they put these tires in these kind of ovens, and they use heaters to try to preheat the tire before they install them on the car so that it's closer to its operating temperature. And then once you go out on track, it'll normally heat up a little bit more, probably another 30 or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And the trick is to not keep making it heat up, because in that sort of window, there's a specific temperature window, somewhere a little bit above 200 degrees Fahrenheit. These tires will make a lot of grip. But if you keep sliding the tire around and make that temperature go much higher, what happens is the tire starts to get greasy, and like oils inside the rubber start coming out, and the tire gets really slippery.
You know, it's really interesting that you mentioned this. And one thing CJ mentioned yesterday that I hadn't even really considered, and I've been around watching racing for a long time, is another reason why they might get slicker is when the tire heats up, there's air inside the tires, and that pressure will rise. There's a gas law in there somewhere. Higher temperature, higher pressure, and generally higher pressure tires have a little bit less grip. You want low pressure, you want the tire to kind of squish into the ground a little bit to increase that contact patch at the expense of maybe wearing the tire out a little bit more. So there's lots to consider in tire technology in itself, and Pirelli does a great job, but there certainly is an operating range, and it usually takes a lap or two to get up to that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the temperature. The pressure has an ideal window, and you're really trying to predict the temperature that you're going to run at, because that lets you essentially calculate what pressure you need to run to give the tire the right amount of squish, but also the right amount of support so that the wheel isn't kind of moving around inside the tire. So it's definitely a lot of practice goes into that, so you're always measuring the pressures and temperatures before you get to the race to try to calculate that very accurately. So that's definitely one of the variables that you have to adjust to try to get the car really perfect for the race.
And one battle I'm really excited to watch here is the battle for third overall. David Askew and Shelby Blackstock as they work their way through the last half of the S's. Just over 30 minutes to go, and we know that Blackstock's an amazing driver, as is David Askew, but this looks like this battle's about to heat up, and it's going to be pretty scrappy.
Right. I mean, kind of the first thing you're trying to do when you just get in a car after you've been in your co-driver's been driving is you're trying to see how the car really feels, because someone else has been driving it, and if they've been pushing really, really hard, maybe the brakes don't feel the same as the last time you drove, or this or that. But you're also trying to get the tires to be back into that window we were just talking about, so you can kind of run those optimum lap times.
And now they're going to chase each other down the back straightaway. Shelby Blackstock in the draft of that Mercedes, going to pop out to driver's left. He'll have a look down here into turn number 12. On the brakes, the ABS underfoot and through. He'll go into third place. That would be a podium overall. And David Askew will drop into fourth place. We'll see if Askew can respond here in the closing 30 minutes, but a nice clean pass for Blackstock.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Blackstock was able to get in the draft there, get a couple of more mile an hour at the end of the straightaway, and brake just to get to the inside there, and that's what allowed that pass to happen.
This is the battle for the race lead here overall. That is the Wright Motorsports entry that currently has Fred Pordat in command, and behind him is going to be the Squadra Corsa car driven by Martin Fuentes. So they're going to chase each other up the front straightaway, and this is for the race lead here, Kevin. So with 31 minutes to go, we're going to have a battle for the top spot, Porsche versus Ferrari.
Yeah, as you see the Ferrari kind of peek its nose out and try to fill up the mirrors and let the Porsche know that he's there as he pulls to the inside here, trying to get a run down into turn 2.
Over, under, through turn 2, down the hill. Now the Ferrari going to swing around the outside. Had a look, but couldn't quite make it fit up the inside. We'll have to wait now. Now going to string through the S's. Right, and left again. The Wright Motorsports car chasing the apexes. This is a difficult place to pass, but it looks like Fuentes is trying to find every way around. I'd target turn 11 or 12 as a passing opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it seems like the Ferrari's just a little bit faster right now. He's definitely hounding this Porsche and trying to find a way by, but it's very difficult at this track because of all these twisty, turny sections.
We're going to find that I think Fuentes will pop out of line here just as a distraction. Maybe not quite. Maybe the headlights will flash a little bit. This is all just a plot to distract the race leader and make him look up in the mirrors and not focus on the road ahead.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when you're the car chasing, you're really trying to make that driver in front of you pay as much attention to you as possible, because that makes them pay less attention to being really precise on the racetrack and trying to run as fast as they can. So that's really what you're trying to do.
It's very difficult to drive a race car when you're looking out the mirror half the time, and for Pordat, his only goal, I think, would just be to not mirror drive, to focus on the lines ahead. But you also have to remember to stay defensive, and here's another look at that pass into, I believe this was earlier in the day.
So this was Blackstock over Askew.
And there's the number 1 car is going to try to squeeze over. This is in turn 15, going to get the run out. Now it's a triple right-hander. Race Vision powered by AWS. Fastest speed on the straight. Look at Kyle Marcelli, 164.7. As around the outside goes Fuentes for the race lead in the carousel. And I don't think Pordat will be able to respond to that.
No, that's a really difficult move to pull out, because there's a lot of kind of rubber marbles on the outside of the carousel there, and to go on the outside, you end up picking those up on your tire, and you basically lose a lot of grip for a couple of turns until you wear all those little rubber marbles off.
It's interesting to look at Kyle Marcelli's speed, 164.7 on the Race Vision powered by AWS. Fastest speed going down into turn number 12. That is incredibly quick. And this is a 1 kilometer long straightaway. It's not short by any stretch, but it's also not the longest straightaway we see in GT World Challenge America powered by AWS. So that's a lot of speed to be carrying.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive and quite a bit faster than we saw earlier. I think maybe there was some drafting.
Oh, for the race leader, trouble. He's going to cut the S's big time in the left-hander, and that could be at least a warning from race control. Just got a little bit wrong, and that was a pretty sizable cut there. So if he gained time, that will certainly be looked at by race control.
Yeah, they're going to look at the sector time there and see if he gained much time on the Porsche there. But in the end, it looked like a mistake. So typically they don't frown upon kind of making a mistake because it's really hard to gain time when you do that.
And hopefully for Fuentes' sake, they'll let him have one. And from what I've been seeing, he's been pretty good about track limits so far today. So usually they give you 1 or 2 mulligans before they start reeling you in a little bit.
That's right, winner of the GT2 category, specifically Ryan Gates, once again a winner. And I gotta say, driving one of these GT2 cars around a circuit like Circuit of the Americas, it's gotta be a total blast. And then to get a little trophy at the end of it, what was the experience like?
Well, this track it's a big track. Lots of ups, lots of downs. There's some bumps, lots of curves. So that car is moving around quite a bit. But I have to say it does a pretty great job of handling all the different undulations, and it makes it pretty fun out there. A lot of work.
Yeah, we can tell, but it looks like a lot of fun, like you said. Coming from your time attack background, how different is it to go into a long race around a long circuit like this?
Well, honestly, I look at it as almost each lap we're trying to do a qualifying type lap. You leave a little bit left on the table, but just being super consistent, and that seems to work out pretty well, at least for how it feels for me.
Sure looks that way to us as well. Congratulations.
Appreciate that. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Ryan. That was the GT Sports Club podiums going on in the background. You see the one car now pulling a gap on poor Dad. But going back to the track limits discussion, there's a lot of racetracks like Road America a couple weeks ago. That's a place where the track limits were only a slight discussion in a few corners, but that place will penalize you hard for going wide. This place, of course, is built to really modern safety standards. It's got a lot more pavement, and that leads to drivers getting creative. But I think for the most part this weekend, the race control's been pretty tight-handed on some of the corners, but has been letting drivers experiment a little bit more. This is what I was waiting for. The Race Vision powered by AWS, fastest speed at the S's. Jan Halen earlier, look at the difference there.
Yeah, I think this really goes, we mentioned earlier kind of the different ways to approach those S's, and the difference of 20 miles an hour there is really just whether you can really charge in hard or if you have to set up the beginning really precisely and then charge out of the S's. So yeah, it's a really interesting fact there.
This is why I love this AWS-powered data analysis, because it allows you, maybe we can even discuss the differences between the race cars. Again, the Porsche is sort of a rear-engined car, which is a very different dynamicism going on in terms of the physics involved with lugging this race car around the track. The other cars involved, the Mercedes is a front-engine platform, and the Acura and the Ferrari are mid-engine. So how does that play in an engineering mind, when you're driving a race car?
Well, I mean, it really affects how the car changes direction mostly, because the weight distribution is the engine is one of the most heaviest parts of the car. So if you put that in between all 4 wheels, it ends up more evenly distributing that weight, and that makes the car really easy to control from one direction to the other. But even the Mercedes, even though it's front engine, that engine's really set back. So it's sort of a front mid-engine car where the engine is still pretty far back and behind the front axle a little bit, which keeps that weight pretty distributed. But it's all how you set up the car and where that weight is that really affects how it changes direction and which end of the car has the most grip.
Yeah, and again, the Porsche with the rear engine, that is basically the opposite of the front engine car. I think it's, I know that Porsche's, their GTE effort has kind of moved that engine more of a mid-engine, midship kind of platform, but I think the GT3 the engine's still behind the rear axle. Do you know if that's still the case?
I honestly don't even know. I was just wondering that in the back of my mind.
I still think it's a rear engine, the GT3s are at least. Oh, that might be changing as Porsche's been experimenting with the engine placement, because theoretically the rear engine placement is sort of a weird layout, but Porsche's made it work, and they've made it work really well over the decades of sports car racing.
Yeah, I mean, it gives some advantages to have all the weight on the rear wheels, because essentially that gives you more grip when you're exiting turns. So generally you'll see the Porsches will get the best drive out of the turn. So they'll always pull a little bit of a gap for the first third of the straightaway, and then it'll get reeled back in at the end.
Another look at Ziad Gondor in the Racer's Edge Motorsports car. Again, this car lost time in the pits both days, and unfortunately, they've kind of dropped behind significantly, and that the stall in pit lane just sort of added fuel to the fire. In behind them is the Windward Racing 33. Not as good of a day today for them as they run back in 6th overall right now, and they ran 4th yesterday, even after, or they ran up towards the front yesterday, so not as good of a day for them. But still learning the race car is Alec Udell, and he did a phenomenal job yesterday, but I think today started off a little bit of a struggle and is still trying to overcome that today.
Yeah, and it looks like he's running down the Acura right now, so there might be a battle for position here within a couple of laps.
We'll keep our eye on that, and we'll actually have a look at the lap times here to see if that's the case. Yeah, well, actually, this is a great look. Here is, again, P1TS. We're looking at Alec Udell here on the bottom. Oops, that's not going to work. Alec Udell is the number 33 car. Look at the last lap, a 2:07.705 in comparison to Gondor's 2:10.580. 3-second gain for Udell on that number 80. So I think we are going to see a battle.
Yeah, it'll be within the next, I would say, lap or maybe at 2 at the most before they're going to be right on top of each other. And even though there's a 3-second per lap gain right now with Udell, it's still going to be a little bit of a challenge to get by because these cars it's really tough to pass, especially at a track like Circuit of the Americas.
And I want to go back to, here is a look at the kind of the gap difference between the 33 and the 63. And you can see during the pit stop sequence, they dropped way back. But look at the climb up now that Udell's jumped in the car. He's found some pace and is, I think he's still about 20 seconds back from the 63 of David Askew, but certainly climbing forward. There is the current race leader, Fuentes, in the number 1. Poordad has dropped off as we get to the final 22 minutes of this race. But what a performance this car has had this week, and they have been on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they've been fast all week, so they've found something that really works at this track, and they've been completely taking advantage of it all weekend.
And going back, we mentioned the speeds that we saw entering the S's, and here's that battle, the 33 and the 80 now. But we'll talk a bit more about this, the AWS part in motorsports here in a minute, but this Windward Racing car has found some more legs, and up the inside, the 80's going to move over and let him go. I think maybe they're dealing with an issue in this car, or dropping off pace significantly.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very aggressive place to pass. It's really hard to get a pass done there, so you have to wonder if there's an issue with the Acura or if maybe it's still getting up to speed.
Yeah, but going back to AWS and their technology in motorsports, they've got that race vision that we've been taking a look at today, and here's a bit more about AWS tech in motorsports.
Hello, I'm CJ Moses, the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for Amazon Web Services. Coming on as title sponsor with the SRO has allowed us to create new innovation, to use our technologies in ways they've never been used before. The cloud is very capable. All of these 195 services that we offer provide vast different capabilities, but customers come up with even better ways to use it than we ever thought of. In the case of the SRO, we're going to be bringing better experiences through to the TV itself. Second screen experiences where we're going to be doing a lot of predictive analytics and things like that. These are the types of things that we want to see our customers from AWS actually do, and by partnering with the SRO, we're introducing it to a whole new venue and to sports cars. We're bringing a lot of excitement to it as well. And when you have excited fans that are getting a better experience and we're able to showcase the technology that AWS has doing that, I think it's a win-win for SRO, for us, and for the fans that are actually engaged in the watching of the event.
Welcome back to Circuit of the Americas for GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. We were just talking during the break. Shelby Blackstock in that Racer's Edge Motorsports Acura is beginning to hunt down Fred Pordat in the Wright Motorsports Porsche, Kevin. 18 minutes to go. I think he's got time to get there.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the lap times, it looks like Blackstock's running somewhere around 1 to 1.5 seconds faster per lap, so it won't take long to kind of catch up.
Yeah, and this battle will continue for the rest of the race. In the final 18 minutes, things pick up just a little bit, Kevin.
Brought to you in partnership with Pirelli and with Rebellion Timepieces.
But things always pick up in those final 20 minutes, Kevin. Even today in your race, the TC race number 3 of the weekend, you had a pretty intense battle for going for a podium spot there at the end. So tell me a little bit about the last stage of this race. What goes through your mind, and how hard are you pushing to try to get that last final spot?
Well, I mean, in the TC race today, we were really running flat out for the entire race because there's so much on the line right now, and I don't think anybody had a lot of tire left because when you're pushing really hard like that, you sort of wear the tire completely out. So I think these guys here, they're really trying to manage those tires right now and try not to use up too much of the tire so that you have enough to be able to pull off these passes.
Now, this Wright Motorsports car, if you think all the way back to Sonoma back in August, they had a phenomenal run there and did a great job holding off cars that were basically classified above them. The silver class car of Blackstock and Hinman, they are behind that Pro-Am entry that Pordat is in right now. And again, to show a Pro-Am entry in front of a silver entry like this is super impressive for Pordat right now. And the goal here is to hold off Blackstock in the closing moments. But you saw a little wide in turn 13, and now they're going to chase each other into the stadium section where Blackstock is going to set up a pass here in the next couple laps. But going to see this Wright Motorsports Porsche get real defensive.
Yep, I think we're going to see that, and Blackstock is going to be pretty aggressive as well, and I don't think there's going to be any risk of contact. These guys are going to race really clean, but Blackstock is trying to figure out exactly where his advantage is right now and try to plan where he's going to try to make a pass, and it looks like he's going to do that probably within the next lap or two at the most.
A big closure on the brakes there. Now the run up the 130-foot climb into turn number 1 in the blind crest. And then once you get past turn 1, Kevin, it seems like you want to set up for either 11 or 12. Seems like those are good passing opportunities if you can't get it done in turn 1.
Yeah, it's really hard to pass in the S's, so the best thing to do is to try to get a really good run kind of out of turn 9 to set up for turn 11. And if you can't get it done there, then you're really trying to get it done at turn 12 in the brake zone.
And we saw Jan Halen in this Wright Motorsports Porsche earlier, slinging it through the S's, and the entry speed we saw on the Race Vision powered by AWS so much faster than everybody else. But here it looks like Blackstock's got his car right in the right line to chase this car down and have a look into 11 here. Left, right, left again, up over the crest in 9. And battle for what will be second place overall.
Yeah, you're going to see Blackstock really try to get a good run out of 9 here, and he does exactly that, and I think we're going to see him poke the nose of the car out as we get to the brake zone and try to do the pass in the brakes.
Big dive up the inside into turn 11, and Blackstock is through. Crossover by Pordat. He'll get the power down early, which is where, Kevin, you said that this car will be advantageous as they dig out of turn 11 and run down to 12, and Blackstock crowding over to the left as they drag race to 12.
Yeah, I mean, this is side by side. It's going to be all the way to the brake zone, and it's going to be who can brake the latest to get to turn 12.
Past the CrowdStrike banners into turn 12 now, and Blackstock around the outside. He's cleared the right car, but runs a little wide on exit. He's through, so move Blackstock to second place, and a big dive up the inside. Not quite there for Pordat, though.
That's right. It's whenever you're in these battles and you're going to be as close as you can, you try to, if you just got passed, you try to make your own pass right back, just because that's going to be your best chance.
And here's a look again at the passing attempt into 11, and Blackstock really sailed down in there, got the car woed up, and you see him slide there just a little bit on exit, and the Porsche had a great run out. And then now it's flat 6 versus the V6 that's in the Acura down the back straightaway.
Yeah, and it's clear that Blackstock has a lot of pace right now as he's already building a gap.
And the Racer's Edge Motorsports team, we talked earlier about the team aspect of racing within DXTT Racing and how many people it takes to get the cars on the racetrack, and competitive as they are here. We've seen DXTT Racing and Boehm Racing cars in victory lane all weekend. So certainly a team sport as they gear up to end the weekend here at Circuit of the Americas. 14 minutes to go. And going back to P1TS, I wanted to have a look at the lap times to see if there's anybody else we could see have a run at the race leader. Fuentes continues to lead, 8 seconds back to Blackstock. I'm not sure he'll get there, but let's never say never.
That's right, and it looks like David Askew has a little bit better pace than Poor Dad right now as well, but it might need to be a little bit quicker to get it done before the 13 minutes left in the race countdown. And there is David Askew right now as he sweeps through, runs on down in the S's, or the S's portion of the racetrack. Udell is behind him, and Ziad Gondor. They're all separated by about 10 to 12 seconds here, so could see some cars close up by the end of the race, but the final 13 minutes of the second and final race of the weekend. Looking forward to Indianapolis. We have an endurance race on the schedule, an 8-hour endurance race, Kevin. Tell me about that and how the mindset changes from these 90-minute effective sprints to an 8-hour enduro at Indy. Yeah, I mean, an 8-hour long race is much different than these 90-minute races because you have to preserve the car just a little bit more. Here in these 90-minute races, these guys can run really hard the whole time. There's a little bit of tire management, but for the most part, these guys are just pushing really hard for the whole race. But in contrast, for an 8-hour race, you really have to manage your tires, you have to manage your brakes, because there's multiple pit stops where there's only one here. So you're really trying to minimize the number of pit stops, and then also for the 8-hour race, there's no minimum pit time. So you really want to pit as fast as you can, as few number of times for the whole race, and that can save you multiple seconds on track, especially as they add up every single pit stop through the whole 8 hours.
And teams will often elect to put a third driver in, and when you're trying to put a couple different people in the same race car, you have to think about the ergonomics of everything, how the mirrors are lined up, the seat inserts to make sure that everyone can fit the right way and be comfortable. That's hard enough with 2 drivers. Now you add a third one into the mix, and there's a lot of planning that has to go into these events, and a lot of work back at the shop to make sure that everything's perfect when you get to Indy.
That's right, and one of the main reasons to potentially add a third driver is because 8 hours of time on track all back to back is really tiring. So to put a kind of fresh body in the seat, they have a little bit more ability to get everything out of the car. So sometimes you can get a better result with that kind of new person in the car.
Certainly, and that of course will be October 2nd through 4th, and we'll be there as well with CrowdStrike Racing's coverage of that event. So make sure that you're watching. We'll have some other people join us here in the booth. We've got Bob Page sitting behind us. I think we'll have him jump in a little bit as well. So I'll get myself a third headset so we can bring in more people into the conversation. And again, that will be available on CrowdStrikeRacing.com. So again, thanks for joining us here. 11 minutes left. Martin Fuentes out front. Shelby Blackstock in second. Fred Portad, David Askew running similar times in second and third in class. And that's a podium for David Askew if he can stay there in the Pro-Am category.
That's right. It's been a really good race for David today, and I think they're going to really be happy with a podium result. I know they were working really hard last night to try to get a little bit more pace out of the car, and maybe not as much as they want, but definitely a podium result is definitely something to be proud of.
Certainly, and the team worked hard yesterday. There was a little bit of left front damage from some cars crowding David Askew down in the corner in turn 1 yesterday, so that car got repaired in record time. I was watching the team work on it. Super impressive to get that car repaired, and we would never know looking at it today, so great job there. With 10 minutes to go now, there is Blackstock hustling the car around the carousel. We talked about that as a track feature, the triple apex right-hander, and Udell, who has jumped in this car and made this thing a rocket ship in the second half of this race.
Yeah, I mean, he's putting down some really fast lap times. Sort of I guess he's the second fastest car on the track right now. So definitely if the race was a little bit longer, I think he would be making his way up, but maybe not quite enough time to get to David.
Yeah, Alec Udell right now about 7.5 seconds behind the 63 DXTT Racing car, as he sweeps onto the front straightaway. With 9 minutes left, we're looking at 7 or 8 laps remaining in this race as we come across the line, or it should actually be a little bit less than that. Pretty long lap here, just like Road America. Over 2 minutes around here, Kevin. I want to ask you, short track or long track? Do you like having longer sections to kind of strain together, or do you like having those fast repetitive laps?
Well, I mean, believe it or not, even though this track's really long, there's the track's kind of broken up into all these different sections. So it feels like everything's coming at you really fast at COTA, because you sort of get these, like the S's here, you go through those, you have left, right, left, right, left, right, and you're going through there, and then finally you get a break at a straightaway. So you almost do like a little bit of a section, and then you get a break, and then you have another section and a break, and it's not a lot different than a track like Lime Rock that's just all turns all the time.
We just saw on our Race Vision powered by AWS, it was Kyle Marcelli's speed that still holds up, 164.7 miles an hour. And again, that data on the AWS cloud relayed to us. And again, super cool technology. Talked with CJ yesterday about how they implemented that, because it's difficult to get data from a race car back in real time without any lag or latency or anything of that business. So exceptional technology that's been really cool to investigate and look at this weekend. And thanks to AWS for providing that information to us during the broadcast here. There is Udell in the 33, and I think David Askew's just up the road here, so it's going to be a race to the checkers here.
That's right, and I know Udell is trying to hit his marks and just run the fastest laps that he can to try to get to David as early as he can, to give him a chance to try to set up a pass, because it's one thing to catch the car in front of you, but it's a complete another thing to try to get by.
Now, for David Askew, you got to be thinking about the cars that you're racing. Alec Udell is not in the same category. This 33 is a silver class car, so how much is it worth that overall position to maybe drive defensively, or is it worth it? Would you rather just let him go by?
Yeah, I mean, if it was me, I think I would be pretty cautious in this situation, because there's not a lot to gain to stay ahead of Udell in this particular case. I think it's better to save the car and make sure that you can finish in the podium position in your class. You don't want to accidentally make contact with a car or get a flat tire or do anything like that compromises your podium position.
Certainly, and one of the other things that we haven't really talked about a whole lot this weekend, we mentioned the track changing between visits with the bumps sort of forming, but what about the track changes during the race weekend with the rubber and the marbles accumulating? How much is that a factor here at the end of this 90-minute race?
Yeah, I mean, typically these race weekends, you start out and there's not a lot of rubber on the track, so the track's basically the most slippery that it's going to be, and then as the week goes along, as all the cars drive on the track, it kind of puts rubber down on the ground, and you see all the black marks here on the track. That all adds grip to the track. So the track itself gets faster and faster, but when the sun comes out, like it always does here in Texas, that rubber that's on the track gets really hot from the sun load itself, and that sometimes if it's hot enough, you'll start losing grip. So you kind of have to plan for that.
You know what, I really like looking at the braking zones. We saw into 11, and we'll point it out again in turn 12. You can actually see different black marks in the braking zones where the cars are bouncing over the bumps. You see on the bottom right of your screen, right by the GT World Challenge America logo. It's black for a moment, then it's kind of gray, then black again as the cars bounce over the bumps and laying the rubber down harder at certain sections.
That's right, and believe it or not, like, those are so reliable. You can use those as reference points and know exactly where you are on the track. They're always there, and they get darker and darker as the week goes on.
It's really cool to watch the track change over the course of the weekend. And here's David Askew now, feeling the pressure from the 33 Windward Racing car driven by Alec Udell. The exit at turn 15, such a constricting corner, and then they'll run into the carousel, which is all high speed, leaning on the downforce of these cars. And again, David Askew's car is a relatively new car that is the newer generation, the Evolution Kit Mercedes, versus the one behind them is the older generation Mercedes. So some slight differences in the bodywork there. As you see, looks like David Askew is going to play the smart move here, and I think just let the 33 go. Not battling for class position, so no real risk or no real need to battle there as they now run side by side on corner exit. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, you say that, but I think David might have just ran wide at 19. I think he still wants to hold this position if he can, but he's not going to risk too much.
That was really clever, actually, because when he ran wide in 20, and he kind of arced it in so he could get the run down the straightaway, and now they'll drag race to turn 2. Now I think the 33 will get by, but that was exciting for a minute.
That's right. I think David's driving really smart here. He's trying to minimize the amount of time he gets that's lost, but for the most part, he's still not taking any extra risk.
Yeah, that was a fun moment to watch there as they went down the front straightaway. Under 5 minutes to go now, 2 or 3 laps left in this one. Bit of a bobble out of the 33. And we discussed yesterday the driver aids that they're using, anti-lock brakes, traction control, things that help drivers go quicker in this car, in these cars specifically. Tell me a little bit about ABS and traction control and how you can lean on them as a driver.
Well, I mean, there's actually multiple settings in the car, and you can kind of turn the the knob and allow either more slip in traction control or a more sensitive ABS control. And essentially you want to try to turn that knob into the right position that matches the amount of grip on the track, and then you can typically rely on it pretty heavily. You can just, in the brake zones, just mash on the pedal as hard as you can, and if the knob is in the right spot, then the ABS takes over and the car stops really, really stable and lots of decel. And then once you get to the corner exit, if the traction control's in the right position, you can be really aggressive with the throttle. You don't want to just jump on it, but you can kind of quickly squeeze into the throttle, and typically any kind of extra wheel slip that you get is kind of controlled with that traction control.
And we saw the advantages of ABS on display earlier with CJ Moses in the AWS CrowdStrike Racing Honda Civic Type R TCR, passing the points leader down in turn number 11, leaning on that ABS. That was a fun battle to watch as CJ chucked it down in there and made it stick. That was cool. With 3 minutes to go, look at this Ferrari, this Squadra Corsa car. Again, the Race Vision powered by AWS, fastest corner speed at the S, is still that Porsche the quickest through there.
Yeah, that speed through the S's or entering the S's is unbelievable. I don't think anybody's going to get close to that for the rest of this race, and I think a lot of the teams are going to look at that and scratch their heads a little bit about what they can do next year to try to do something like that.
Yeah, 132 miles an hour into that section of the racetrack is not slow. We drove through it in a minivan going about 40, and I thought that was too fast. So 132 is plenty. But again, that's the interesting thing about GT3 racing is the differences between the cars show themselves in different ways. And we've also seen on the straightaways, those Acuras are pretty quick in a straight line too. So differences in certain places on the racetrack, advantages and disadvantages to each car. But I'd say that overall the GT3 racing is so fun to watch with the different platforms all competing together.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, these cars all do a lap time that's so close, but they do it in slightly different ways. And as a race driver, that's great because you get to strategize and try to figure out exactly what way you can kind of take advantage of those little differences to pass the car in front of you.
So with 2 minutes left, this will mean that when Martin Fuentes gets back to the start-finish line, we will see the white flag displayed from the start stand. That will signify 1 lap to go. And Shelby Blackstock had worked on reeling in Fuentes a little bit, but still 9 seconds back. And behind them, in 3rd place overall, is Fred Portet, then Alec Udell, David Askew, Ziad Gondor left on the racetrack here with 1 minute and 45 seconds remaining. And you see the one car sweeping through 19 all the way out. Over the rumble strips, there's actually a second stage that's a little bit more aggressive, and you get out there, and that probably rattle your teeth out just a little bit. Onto the front straight, white flag for the race leader in GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. And this team has been on it this weekend. Fuentes and Rodrigo Baptista, they have been doing such an amazing job with this car. Blackstock, 9 seconds back, has been reeling them in, but I don't think it's going to be quite enough.
Yeah, I think these guys have been swapping lap times back and forth, so I think that the gap to Blackstock has been fairly constant for a little while, but I know Shelby wanted to get to that first position, but I think he's going to be happy with 2nd overall because still they're leading the silver category.
Yeah, and the 2nd place car, that number 33 Windward Racing car, 4th place overall as they sweep through a nice big cut over the curbing there for the number 1. And now up the hill, hugging the right side, almost got the tires in the grass. They let you get away with a lot over there, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, us drivers don't follow directions very well, so we're going to use every piece of asphalt on the track that we can that we feel like will get us faster lap time.
I was joking, earlier with some guys. They tell you got to stay within the white lines. Well, there's actually a couple of white lines, and I think the drivers are, oh, that white line is what you meant. But they've been enforcing some of the other corners around the racetrack very tightly, and some they're letting the guys kind of get a little bit more loosey-goosey, but I think for the drivers, it's fun to run a little wide sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, we have selective hearing, and we kind of try to do what we interpret the rules to be, and we really rely on the series to kind of smack us on the wrist at some point and tell us, no, you can't do that. Otherwise, it seems like we're following the rules.
We were setting up banners out there on the racetrack, and we had one at corner exit out of turn 11, and the guys, I said, guys, maybe this one will get hit, and they go, no, they won't. It's way far away from the edge of the track. And we went out there yesterday. There's a big black mark from a tire on it. I go, I told you. It was about 6 feet off the edge of the racetrack, but still, it's been a blast to be here this weekend at COTA, and certainly for the Squadra Corsa team, they've had a blast here, and they've been on it this weekend. And for the Ferrari 488, for Rodrigo Baptista and Martin Fuentes, Today is the right day for them at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Winners again in GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. They'll pick up a checkered flag in the 90-minute event here. Behind them, Shelby Blackstock and Trent Hinman in the silver category. They'll pick up a win in their class in the Racer's Edge Motorsports car, and a win for Blackstock and Hinman once again in silver. Poor Dad in the Wright Motorsports car. Spin to fourth yesterday, and today it'll be a third overall, a podium for them. And second in the Pro-Am category, Udell with a great charge. He almost got back to the right car at the end. Udell will bring it home in fourth. And David Askew in the number 63. A strong start to this race. They will end the race with a solid top 5 in fifth in that number 63. Then, of course, Ziad Gondor. Some troubles in the latter half of that race, Kevin, but Gondor and Marcelli certainly gave it their all today.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, it's great to see those guys back at the track, and good to see the Acura doing pretty good.
So we'll run down things for you. Again, we've got Indianapolis here coming in October 2nd through 4th. CrowdStrike Racing's coverage will be back on Sunday, October 4th for the Indianapolis 8-hour. We'll be joined by, again, CJ Moses and Kevin Boehm once more, along with some other people from the team. And we'll have probably Bob come on here, talk for a little bit, and it'll be a fun one, I think. So make sure you join us on October 4th. I think the race starts at 10 a.m. Eastern time, so make sure you're there. Check CrowdStrikeRacing.com, and also on CrowdStrikeRacing.com there is a coloring book you can download. If you haven't entered the contest in that coloring book, you certainly should. You can download a copy for yourself at CrowdStrikeRacing.com. You can tag your best entries on social media by the Indianapolis race weekend in October. The winner will get a cool CrowdStrike Racing swag bag and don some really neat merchandise. So I'm a big fan. I'll enter it if I can, and I'll maybe do some coloring in the lines. And if you're a race car driver, you might go a little bit outside the lines and say you were in the lines. But it's a lot of fun. And again, thanks to CrowdStrike and AWS for allowing us to be here this weekend. And at Indianapolis, we'll be back for an 8-hour event, Kevin. But let's sum up your weekend. Couple race wins, and you'll be headed to Indy with a 31-point lead.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a really good run at the championship here in the last 6 races. So we've won 5 out of the last 6, and we really want to take that momentum to Indy and see how well we can do there. But fortunately, we've done so well in the last few that I think we have a little bit. The pressure's not really on us. I think we really just have to go and kind of check the boxes and just do what we've already been doing, and I think the results are just going to come. And I think we're really looking forward to Indy and seeing if we can get back up on the podium.
It's been a blast being here this weekend with TC America, GT4 America, and of course GT World Challenge America powered by AWS. Lots of racing this weekend, lots more to come. We'll show you the results here in just a moment. Cars returning to the pit lane and ready for podium celebrations. And we'll get to enjoy it again. The pit limiter coming on. There is the Racer's Edge 93. And they are in a championship fight, and we'll look to continue that as they head into Indy in a couple weeks. There's the Wright Motorsports car pulling on in. And in just a moment, we'll show you the race results. So covering the last little bit of event this afternoon, we'll have Kevin move on with his day, because you got to get out of here. You got to start focusing on Indy. And we'll move on in a few weeks over there. And we'll leave Austin, Texas, head out there. And wait, we got to pack a truck. There's a lot of trucks here, and DXDT Racing has got a really big operation in TC America. There's a handful of TCR cars, got the TCA entry as well as the 2 GT3 entries. So there's a lot to pack up and move between events, and the next stop will be up at Indianapolis, which is such a cool racetrack, Kevin. Is that your first time going there?
No, I've raced there fortunately a few times, and this configuration I think is going to be a really fun configuration to drive. It's the similar to I think it's the same as the IndyCar configuration, so it's going to be fun to race on. And I haven't been there in the TCA car before, so we'll have a lot of learning to do. But I'm going to jump off here and go and actually prep the car a little bit, because the car's just going straight to the track. So we're going to get it ready for Indy here, and then go home for a few days, and then show up at Indy and try to go fast.
All right. The CrowdStrike Racing fastest lap award goes to Jan Halen, a 2:06.238, the quickest lap of the day. There's a look at your race 2 results. And, of course, David Askew in 5th, along with Ryan DL. They're a great run for them for DXDT Racing. So, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. We'll let you get on your way and have the rest of the afternoon to start packing up, and then we'll see you at Indianapolis.
All right. Thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Absolutely. We'll see you.
Yes, a happy Martin Fuentes, that's for sure. Martin, it's been nip and tuck in the points battle all season long, and you get here and you get the news that your closest competitors aren't here, and you maximize that opportunity. How important was that to get as many points as you could with your competitors, unfortunately, on the sidelines?
You know what? The most important thing for us was just to have a fast car. I mean, I know the circumstances were bad for the Mercedes team, but we were just focusing 100% on getting the car faster and faster. And Rodrigo did a great job the whole weekend. The team did a great job. I'm just impressed and thankful for every one of the guys that did a great job. And Rodrigo and I, we come to the lead of the championship again.
That's right. Congratulations on that. We'll have you step over. Rodrigo will bring you in. It's been a difficult weekend. It wasn't smooth sailing from the beginning. You had to find the balance on this race car. How much of a hard work effort was it to get the car to your liking?
Yeah, for sure. I think we started on Friday a bit lost, and the guys did a great job on the qualifying. The car was really good. On the first race was also really good like now, and it wasn't easy to drive. The car was moving a lot, but was quick, so I think the whole team, everyone did a great job, and of course Martin and the move he did and everything he did, so I'm really happy for that.
Congratulations, guys. We'll see you in Indianapolis.
Wrapping things up here for CrowdStrike Racing's coverage of GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. A huge thanks to CrowdStrike Racing, DXDT Racing, and AWS for providing us with data and the ability to be out here and bring this coverage to you at home for free. Thank you again for joining us here on CrowdStrikeRacing.com. Again, my name is Kyle Heyer. I was joined yesterday by CJ Moses and today by Kevin Boehm. We're going to see you again at Indianapolis October 4th. Make sure you enter the coloring book contest at CrowdStrikeRacing.com to earn yourself some CrowdStrike Racing swag, and we'll see you again in a little while. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you at Indy.